So we have something to talk about. We have here David Greco, who is the CTO of Eligotech. It's a big data startup. And we have Ihor, who is at a big giant SAP, and he's a senior senior sales executive, correct? Great. So could you guys maybe give a little bit of a background and tell us how you define big data for yourself in your daily work? What is it really?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I'm, as Kirill said, I'm the CTO of this company. So we are developing a product willing to make the usage of Hadoop and other big data technologies simple for non-technical users, and allowing data scientists, data analysts to collect vast amount of data and to be able to analyze it quickly and easily. I could just jump into the big data definition. For me, I think big data is a very hype word, and many different meanings depending on if you are talking from the business side or from the technical side. I would say that big data is a problem. It's the problem that companies are facing for collecting and analyzing effectively vast amount of data. And big data technology are trying to solve this problem. And behind also the definition of big data, there are also some economics. The idea of big data technology, big data world is trying to make the data management, where the sites matter, more efficient in terms of costs, or at least trying to decrease the price-performance ratio for managing 1 terabyte of data, for example. We can just use this simple measure. The cost for managing, for keeping online, for processing 1 terabyte of data. And now we know that all the enterprises are just transforming data. So more and more, with the digitalization, companies will need to be able to process data efficiently. And all this big data technology movement is trying to solve basically this problem.
Ihor,
I do actually agree. I'm Ihor Malchenyuk. I'm from SAP, and as a locally Kyiv-based, quite surprisingly, I'm in minority among speakers. I'd like to thank you all to come to Kyiv to visit this beautiful event, and I'd like to welcome you more visiting Kyiv, visit Ukraine, and I assure you, you'll meet brilliant ideas, smart people, and big data, of course. For me, big data is something more than traditional triple V for volume, variety, and velocity. I typically add also a V for value, and I believe we'll talk more about that value later on. And I'd like also to mention that big data is about acquiring data, storing data, naturally, but also about analyzing and acting on big data insights. So big data should be a part of your it could be a business strategy for you. And I would be more than lucky to tell you some cases about usage of big data in the everyday business, which is already happening around the world. And before telling you some cases, let me ask a simple question. Who loves football? Normal European football. Could you please stand up? Come on, it's Friday afternoon, I understand, but let's keep the pace and energy. Could you please proudly stand up? You like football. You do? Great, thank you. Please have a seat.
It's got to be better than 10%. Come on, everybody loves football.
No, I'm serious. Let me tell you a story, that especially for you who was proud enough to stand up. Let me tell you the story you probably haven't heard about yet. A German football national team. Obviously, that team you heard something about. That team have been using a big data solution during preparation and during World Cup in Brazil. That solution, developed together with us, with SAP, it takes a huge amount of data out of 8 on-field video cameras transferred to SAP HANA in-memory database to analyze, and it's really huge amount. You can imagine that 10 players having, during warm-up, having 3 balls, in 10 minutes, they generate about 7 million records of data. So combined with all the statistical data for last few years, it's a huge amount of data, and what is more important, it's analyzed in real time. So that analysis has been used by scouts, coaches, and players to better prepare for the World Cup. And is anyone here from Brazil? So I'm safe.
Brazil wasn't using a big data solution, obviously.
Yeah, and you can imagine how it affected the football. That the biggest target for football team was the speed, and that results were astonishing. Like average ball possession time for a German team 4 years ago in 2010 was 3.4 seconds, and this year it was 1.1 seconds. They were extremely successful based on statistics and big data solution, extremely successful in the game, and you can imagine the final score against Brazil was 7-1, and they managed to have 3 balls within the span of 3 minutes. So the speed was amazing, and like it's not also about analysis of the team; it's also about analysis of competitor. Like the France, having statistics, they analyzed and they've seen that France team is they tend to be in the middle of the field. So they've been using flanks to attack, and they've been successful against France, Brazil, Argentina, etc. So remember, you don't necessarily need superstars like Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, but big data technologies are definitely the foundation for you to be champions. I can also...
so you just have to give Ihor some money and he will...
I'm ready to tell you many different stories. Like another story, again from sport area, is about McLaren Mercedes team from Formula One, obviously. And as you can imagine, every car has many sensors. Every car has roughly 120 sensors, generating about 6.5 billion of records during a race. And that data is combined with statistical historical data to predict. So a very important topic is predictive analysis. It's a hot topic for big data. To predict at what position that specific car will finish the race, to adopt the strategy and tactics of using pit stops, and to better manage the team as a whole. So it's happening right now in our life. And to tell you about life, we typically mention healthcare. And another story from healthcare is about biochemicals analysis and specifically genome analysis. What DNA is, you know, DNA sequence analysis. One human genome, it has 6 billion DNA pairs. And it's very popular for cancer treatment. It's a question of traditionally, it takes 2 days to analyze and tell if it's a healthy person or it's a cancer patient. And last year, Japan Research Institute, Mitsui Knowledge Industry, they developed a big data solution, actually cloud-based big data solution, and they were managed to reduce that time from 2 days to 20 minutes. 20 minutes to analyze genome. It takes lives. It's a no, really. It's not a merely semi-fictional revenue increase of something. it's in many cases for patients, it's a matter of life or death. So it's something that's happening right now in our everyday lives, and I am more than happy to tell you more stories, but you probably have some questions.
No, I'd love to hear from David as well, maybe some interesting examples of how big data was used.
Yeah, I have examples probably more boring compared with what Ihor said.
Come on.
For example, the insurance company, they are need to, for example, to collect data coming from black boxes. No, the black boxes you put inside your car, and then they need to analyze the driver's behavior, and then they could provide better insurance contract, no, based on the specific behavior. So it's a way for tailoring the offer of the insurance company to their customers. It's an example. Another important example, which is very important, especially these ages, it's the banks need to provide regularly reports to the central regulators, the central banks, regarding the financial risk they are running. And depending on this, depending on the efficiency and the quality of data they are providing to the central regulator, they could get better rate. So there is a direct relationship between money, cost saving, and your capacity to digest huge amount of data. And using data technology, this is my personal experience, they are able to manage this life cycle, the loop of collecting data and providing reports every month, from weeks to days. There is another example, more practical, it's offloading mainframe. No? The banks are using mainframe for preparing this kind of reports, and using the mainframe for computing this kind of statistics extremely expensive. So it's another way. You offload the mainframe, you take the data out of the mainframe, you put in a less expensive platform, more efficient, and then you can get the same result spending millions of euros every year. And it's another example.
You know, judging by what you said, I mean, this is pretty amazing stuff. What do you think, what are some of the challenges, some of the obstacles that your clients, the clients you deal with, that they see or that they encounter, that this adoption is not, you know, maybe as wide as we hope to be, right? Because there's only one person here that has actually seen it. I actually have never used one, and I haven't seen how it works. And it's still very much an emerging technology. What are some of the challenges, the hurdles that your sector needs to overcome to make people comfortable, to make people more comfortable to adopt it? Ihor, you wanna?
That is very true. I absolutely agree. It's emerging technology still, despite the fact that according to analytical company Gartner, they do have a dedicated hype cycle report for big data technologies. And in fact, core big data technologies already passed the phase of boosted expectations and reached the phase of real life usage. Still, it's what we see from real customers and real projects. It's still, customers are really cautious about adoption, and they try to keep big data solutions for innovative areas, for something new, for a proof of concept or pilot project, not for core business yet, of course. And I'm talking about enterprises, big companies, and which is very opposite for, obviously, for startups. Startups are eager to adopt big data because it's something which is giving a very big competitive advantage. It's obviously a very traditional adoption curve. You can imagine that early adopters are getting very big advantage comparing to competitors, and the companies who later follow on, they have vice versa. They have competitive disadvantage without adopting that big data solution or big data technology. And I do see this happening right now, and it's statistically proven that more than 50% of big companies are already using big data. Not for core business functions yet, but it's something that is happening at this time.
My experience is the biggest problems the enterprises are facing when they want to use big data technologies. It's first one, lacking of skill set. It's not easy to find the right people. It's really lacking of people. It's not a matter of price, no? The cost for paying highly specialized people. They are really missing, no? Because it's a bunch of new technologies. So this is the first problem. Second, it's already pretty fragmented market. The offer is very fragmented. So probably you heard about NoSQL. So NoSQL movement, it's like new kind of databases, no? That are more scalable with some technical characteristics that are supposed to be or are better than traditional databases in some context. There are, I don't know, 20 kind of pretty good products. So it's another problem is for CIOs. It's choosing the right tool for the business problem they have to solve. No? And this is, I think, it's delaying a bit the massive adoption of big data. So all the people are talking about big data, plenty of pilots, but at the end, I would say that the percentage of pilots becoming actual production systems, probably it's less than what it was expected maybe 1 year ago, looking at the projections. It's a market which is definitely exploding because looking at the news, the announcement, no, the VCs are injecting a lot of capitals, a lot of money, Intel, for example. But it looks like there is some delay, no, in the adoption for these very practical reasons.
So I guess it has to do with the fact that the big guys, so your big corporate clients, they're doing it in test mode, right? They're still
exactly.
piloting it, but they have huge potential to adopt it in their legacy business intelligence solutions that they're using anyways. And those guys, there's actually a lot of people and a lot of kind of offline, so to speak, technologies that they're still using that they're not willing to throw out, to divest, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely, no doubt. And just I would like to emphasize what you slightly mentioned is I like to reference to big names in analytics, and another company is obviously IDCEE. They gather plenty of data to think about, and just think about that. Big data technologies. You should know, you should remember, big data technologies will grow faster, 6 times faster than IT industry in average. And it will reach, I believe, in 2 years, it will reach
$40 billion.
$30 billion in total. So it's a big, so just to add, as you said, that big data is a problem. It is, but it's also a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to build on and to succeed.
When do you think, in your estimates, or first of all, do you agree with this kind of 30 to 40 billion target in a couple of years? And what does it assume, do you think? Does it assume that, that the old solution will get replaced, displaced, or is it incremental new projects that will come online from big data?
What I do see, yeah,
Okay.
go on.
I think that I never found any enterprise willing to throw everything out of the window and using another new technology. It doesn't know. So it's always, in the big enterprises, it's always evolving something. No? So I would say that big data technology, absolutely, it's amazing opportunity, because now you have the opportunity, or you have what you can do. You have the luxury to collect, to store the raw data that you used to throw away till 2 years ago. No? Telcos, for example. No? Now the telcos could eventually store all the CDR, the raw format, all the records generated by phone calls, SMS, whatever. Which is it's an amazing amount of data. Now they could decide, okay, I want to store in the raw format, I want to extract value from this data. So it's such a big opportunity like DNA analysis, etc., etc. But for this industry to become successful, I think we have to find a way to merge the new technologies with the past, because there are a lot of investment that have been already done. There are a lot of technology which is still valid, and then it's never disrupting approach, but it's always an evolving approach. Yes.
And are there any industries, particular industries that you think are kind of ahead of the curve, that are willing to adopt this now, that to throw out the old solutions? I mean, obviously the German football team is doing pretty well. Good for them. But in terms of just the corporate sector, who do you think is a little bit ahead?
As you already mentioned it, I do agree. It's telcos. Telcos are extremely technological companies. They are more IT companies than many other IT companies. So it's not bolt-on, it's built-in into telco business. But I would also mention banking industry. They have huge amount of data, and they can use. They could have a very big advantage, being able to manipulate, analyze, and act upon insights or out of big data. It's also good for retailers. Retailers can create a single customer experience, both offline and online, out of big data. So banking industry with insurance companies, telcos, retails, and of course, by the way, security. Security in most cases is analysis. And analysis is also based on big data, on huge amounts of data. So security intelligence and transport safety, and many cases which are good, like very recently Bavarian police. If I'm not, as far as I remember, it's 65,000 people working, policemen, and they are using big data solution to track not only their own data, but also data combined with data from social networks. So you can imagine how much of useful for police data is published on Twitter and Facebook, remember? And it's not like they are storing their data, it's illegal. It's big data is also a big, talking about issues which are around big data. It's also a legal framework, how we are using that big data. So. And police is combining statistics and data from social network, not storing data, but analyzing in real time. Again, in real time, analyzing a huge amount of data, making some decisions, sending people in the fields more precisely. So using limited resources with big advantage for a whole society.
This Bavarian example, is it also in test mode, or are they
No, it's
fully scaled?
Full go, it's in production already.
So the Germans, we need to know that the Germans are way ahead.
I know about German
else.
cases because we are a German company, European company more. But still, I believe it's not so geographically specific. Like, if you will ask me, are there big data cases in Ukraine? There are. No, really, there are cases, but like imagine, internet has no borders. We live in the same environment. It's happening right now.
It still seems, and from the investor perspective as well, that it's a buzzword much more in the U.S. Than, well, like many other things. But for us, we hear a lot about big data in the U.S. and how there are a lot of different companies, and it's good to see that Europeans are there as well. Do you see there's any geographical segmentation or lead or?
Yeah, it seems to me that US it's a bit further in the adoption phase, and in Europe I would say that the online companies, at least companies that are managing their business using online, like e-commerce, social networks are mostly based on US. They are already using at least Hadoop or big data technology for for clustering their customers, for doing analytics, for collecting clickstream, media agencies. So all the big companies I'm aware of in Europe that are managing their business using the online internet or these kind of companies are already in the adoption phase. Banking, insurances, tend to be a little bit more conservative. They don't jump on the latest technology. They're not the typical early adopters. They are piloting. So they are trying these technologies, trying to understand if they could provide value. Probably there is an exception in London for the finance world, because they need their market is very peculiar. They need very sophisticated technologies for managing high frequency trading, all this kind of stuff. Hedge funds for analytics, for analyzing data, etc., etc. So they are definitely ahead, no, in terms of adoption. And yeah, I would say the media company are already in the adoption phase. So the big data is not hype anymore. It's one of the different tools you could use. Banking, insurances are on the piloting phase, and then there are the other industry that are lagging behind a bit. But in general, US, for all the different segments, are ahead of us compared to Europe. Is my experience.
Yeah. And if we talk about your, the customers that you work with, they give you certain feedback, obviously. Would you say there's a lot of customization required with the solution? So when you sell them something and then they like it, do you have to hold their hand and then guide them through the process, or is it kind of like you sell them and it works perfectly and don't have to do anything? How does it usually work?
Okay, so for me, what we are trying to do, because big data world is mainly driven by the open source community, and the open source products are not famous for documentation, for this kind of stuff. So the adoption and the integration of this kind of technology inside the enterprise is pretty painful. So there is a lot of tailored code you have to write, you have to engage.
How long does it take usually when?
It takes months. Typical, even a pilot could take 2 or 3 months, depending on the complexity, of course. In fact, our product, this is our niche, so we are trying to decrease the time to solution, trying to make the adoption and the integration of this very popular big data technology quick. So from the day one, you can start to collect data, you can start to analyze them, and then you save costs, you save time, which is very important.
Would you say this is one of the main?
Just to add a few words to what you said about customization, I would not use customization word. It's more about custom software development. But what we like in this area is data science. Another hot buzzword, by the way, and it's to properly improve the big data solution. It's not about technology anymore. Technologies are more or less mature already. They've been using for years. They've been using in multiple success cases. They are freely. I do agree. It's very much driven by open source projects, so they are freely available. But the biggest value is made during making those data models, making those efforts to identify, like. eBay, the biggest internet, one of the biggest internet auction, last year they implemented a so-called early signal detection system out of big data. They tried to, as fast as possible, to identify those early signals and react. So it's also toward your question, how long it takes to implement I would answer it depends, because it depends not on technological side, but on business side too. So to adopt big data, you have to be ready to act upon big data insights. So it's also about business strategy.
Yeah, here it's right. Probably I'm a bit biased by technical background, but my practical experience, when you go on site, you propose a big data approach for solving a specific specific business problem. The first question the enterprise asks you about security, how to manage the users, how to manage the access to sensitive data, etc., etc. These are the recurring and typical enterprise problems. Especially, you can imagine banks. No, especially in Europe, there are regulations for protecting privacy, and then there is an hidden cost, because the big data technology, maybe they provide solutions for solving these problems, but they are not out of the box. You have to build something on top of it. You have to merge how Hadoop, for example, manages security with the security systems of the enterprise surrounding it.
It doesn't.
No, it does. It's difficult. It's probably it's not complete enough. But these are the typical problems that are making big enterprise, especially the most conservative ones, a little bit more cautious in adopting, jumping on this bandwagon. No one is crazy enough for saying that there is no value, that is not a valuable technological wave, etc., but there are still problems, some impedance, in putting all this stuff inside the enterprise.
I agree.
And how would you say, how do you guys compete, basically? So, is there a beauty contest every time with the customers? Is it difficult to convince people? And what can you, how do you basically get to your competitive advantage? What do you need to do to be different from others? Or is there no such problem at the moment? It's still too early.
From my personal experience, we do have to evangelize. It's like telling customers what still it's not something we deeply understand and already adopted in other areas to adopt in telcos, banking, etc., etc. It's something for us to evangelize, to explain, to jointly find out what business cases would be suitable for big data. So it's not like major market where customer precisely knows what he needs.
So they don't know what they want, basically. They just say, make my life easier, and then
like big data.
Everybody comes in and parades around their solutions, right?
And we should probably address that question to our audience. Maybe someone could tell us if they are ready to start big data project, and we are ready to answer your questions.
If you're talking about the big data, we knew that exists little data. If we're talking about big data, we knew that exists little data. Where is criteria for separate little data for big data? You answer for how you talk about your customer about big data. You must talk about where is difference between ordinary data and big data.
A good question. Would you start?
Yeah. When we go to visit some customer, if the customer starts to talk about megabytes of data,
how many megabytes is enough?
Yes, I will say, okay, thank you, it has been a pleasure, but no, we are losing our time. So, I mean, there is a sort of scale factor, till some amount of data or speed of data. So the speed, how the data is incoming in your systems, till a certain level, probably doesn't make sense to invest, or you don't get the value, the real value. As a rule of thumb, I would say like 1 terabyte of data, or when you start to talk about billions of rows in your database, now you are starting to talk about big data, and then you could introduce some efficiency in your system, leveraging in the modern technologies, like I said before, trying to reduce the money you need to spend for managing these volumes. But less than 1 terabyte, probably you can use everything.
I do agree, and since we've mentioned already that strange Hadoop word, everyone is offering Hadoop, and what Hadoop is, it's basically a distributed system of processing something on inexpensive servers.
Exactly.
So as soon as you need more than one server to process data, and as soon as you are talking about terabytes or even better petabytes of data, then we are talking about big data.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Hi, it's actually a double question, if I may. I will ask you this question as individual and as business. For example, as individual, I'm thinking if I share information with other networks and they're going to use it to provide me the best services, then I am very much for it. So I think there should be some, on another side, I'm cautious. Who use data about me and what kind of data? So this is kind of concern as an individual. Then if we move to business side, for example, I run a business in finance, right? My data probably will not be like big data, like a big investment bank, but with time I accumulate data. That at first it's small, then it's grow. Will your technology be fit for businesses that are in SME sector? Or will it be more for bigger companies, like for example, football club or another company, insurance, like major corporates? I mean, and is it going to be different sort of technology developed A for big players and B for SME sector players? Thank you.
Yeah. It's a good question. I would say that with the one of the greatest effects of the open source movement is the democratization of the technology. So you can access sophisticated technology almost for free, or with a very low entrance barrier. No? It is a big opportunity for SMEs, because you can set up, for example, Hadoop, because a technology I know very well. You can set up a Hadoop cluster for probably the cost of a license of a closed source product. No? So I have example of a very small Italian media agency that they need to analyze the click stream. No? They were really struggling, because even for a small media agency, the click stream, so basically what the user do with the specific website, this amount of data is very big. It grows, even if you are a small company. At the end, for them, approaching using these new technologies, it's cheap, no? The only problem is accessing the knowledge. It's the technology per se is cheap. Even the closed source, the certified, I would say, the certified distribution of Hadoop provided by famous vendors like Cloudera or ThoughtWorks. There are a couple of them. I would say that their cost is not too high. It's approachable by a small company. What the people are facing currently is lacking of knowledge. It's probably this is the main hidden cost that somehow stopping. So the SMEs should be enough brave to invest a little bit money in people, in people's skill set. And I think that you get the return on investment pretty quickly. If you have a few people motivated and with the right skill, you can get a lot of value from big data, even if you are not a big enterprise.
Just to add a few words, I do agree, and in your first question, you mentioned that as a person, you do care. As a business, you are not so really cautious about sharing data and how it's going to be used. I do agree, and I constantly see that question about data privacy and more general data governance. Who's going to manage your data? Who's going to use it? What is the information lifecycle management? When it's going to be deleted? How it's going to be merged, etc., etc. And those areas are also something to big data industry to adopt and to develop and to provide you the tools you need. So it's definitely something we all develop into.
Yeah.
You know, it's a follow-up comment. First of all, thank you so much for answering. If I look at it as a business or as an individual, I do care in both cases about security of big data, because as individual, it's my own data. As a business, it's the data of other individuals, which is dear to them like mine is dear to me. My sort of concern is, for example, as a business, I would how we can grow it.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. But my only comment is I would love to get a piece of paper or some sort of other format that tell me this is your, you know, this is shortages of big data technology, this is upsides of big data technology. And then I can make up my mind. Because I think people have different level of risk tolerance or consent tolerance. Some people find consent in one bit, some people probably find consent in other bits. So if this information exists, please email to me. Thank you.
To put it short, we are running out of time. There is no one size fits all. So there is no simple answer to what you mentioned, that here are advantages, here are disadvantages, you to decide. No, it's something for you to talk to me, to David, to someone else, to decide and to form those advantages which are applicable to you. Because for someone, it could be disadvantage. For you, it will be a big advantage. So it depends on your specifics, on your business, on your expectations, on your background. Because as we already mentioned, no big data is built in vacuum. It's not like rip and replace completely. No, it takes some data, acquire some data out of traditional relational database management systems. It takes some data, as I mentioned, from social networks, etc. So it's a matter of elaboration for you. So please don't give all the work to us. We are ready to work for you, but it's also something for you to think about and to elaborate more.
Okay, let's thank our speakers. I think we're done, right? All right, thank you very much, everybody.